For once, we had a nice night at Starhouse. Priest had stopped by with P-21, the two nudging rumps more than a few times as they stood close together. Medley brought some purchases for Glory, mostly ammunition. Glory made dinner. Rampage pretended to be poisoned by it. Every pony was laughing. Medley gave Scotch Tape the stable ponies don't know nothing routine when asked about where the bathroom was. Scotch Tape complained bitterly about having to use an outhouse. The filly promised to bring proper sanitation to the wasteland or die trying. I teased her about having a toilet for a cutie mark, and she looked so embarrassed that she checked immediately. Lacuna quietly watched from the peripheral with a sad, lonely smile. Until I asked her to do some magic tricks. Suddenly, dragged into the middle of our attention, the Alicorn couldn't seem to help herself. The great and powerful Lacuna summoned a little thundercloud that zapped Rampage's rump, animated a rope that prompted a bondage joke that made me blush and Glory grin, and made a little neon illusion of my fight with Psycho Shy. I grumbled a little at the crotch shot. My nethers were tingling in reflex. Then some pony suggested I get Octavia's contrabass and play for them. Lacuna and Scotch had never heard me perform before, so I pulled it downstairs and stood with the bow. Both Priest and Medley seemed still faintly amused that I used an instrument like that instead of magic. Apparently, you just weren't a real unicorn musician if you didn't use your horn to play. I really didn't know what to expect as I was playing, as I started to drag the black horsehair bow across the strings. But apparently it was good enough to earn stomping applause. Then Priest stood and moved next to me, his horn glowing, and a violin began to play alongside me. I noticed that the music was thinner than had been produced by the actual instrument. Side by side we played, me horrible and him more than making up for my little mistakes. Medley listened before she rose to her hooves and joined us with a second, higher violin noise. She was definitely far more snarky and playful as her magic danced and flitted about Priest's more serious notes. When we ended the song, I looked at Lacuna with a speculative little smirk. No. We couldn't. We shouldn't. She stammered. The goddess, I don't play. You know the spell, don't you? Priest said calmly. The purple alicorn nodded once. Well then, we'd love for you to join us. You don't have to. Don't worry, Lacuna. You can't be worse than me, I said as I rested my cheek on the neck of the instrument, feeling oddly as I was like hugging some pony. So don't worry if you're not good. Slowly, she moved to stand behind the three of us. I levitated one of the books of magic over and flipped through. What should we play? I asked as I looked at the titles. One caught my eye. Canon D? What about A, B, and C? A fine choice, Priest said in approval. Oh yeah, that one's one of my favorites. Won't be the same without Sonata's kazoo, though, Medley added. Yes, oui. I know it well. Lacuna whispered solemnly in our minds. I took a deep breath as I gripped the bow, looking at the music. Slowly, the notes began to roll out across the living room. I took some comfort in the easy pacing for my instrument, as it rose and fell as casually as breathing. Then Priest began to play in careful, calm, considerate notes, his horn glowing steadily before he closed his eyes, playing by ear. A few seconds later, Melody joined in, her notes prancing after his with little variations that mixed nicely with his steady play. Then Lacuna started to play. She wasn't good. She wasn't even decent. She was spectacular. Her violin sounded deeper and richer than the other two, rolled out beneath Priest and Melody in a sweet, sad melody. With Priest and Medley, we heard music. With me, we heard noise that must have been mistaken for music. What rose from Lacuna's horn was pure soul. As she played, I imagined a little purple alicorn sitting all alone, playing the only instrument that gave her joy. Lacuna had sad parts of her were missing. I'd eat my tail if this wasn't one of the parts. Lacuna, a la corner knot, was a musician. I was sure that it was as if our 4 notes blended together into one whole. The contrabass hit the 8 notes with regularity, providing the foundation for the other 3. Harmony. It might not have been honesty, kindness, laughter, generosity, and loyalty, but it was as the stars in the sky and overhead. It was magic. That night, Star House was full once more. We doubled up the beds since there was so little sleeping space. I'd given Glory a grin, but her face mirrored Midnight's to an unnerving degree as she trotted to her own room with Medley. Priest and P21 slipped into the room they'd both claimed. Rampage took her bed with Lacuna in the living room. That left Scotch Tape with me. She didn't seem very happy with it, but there was nowhere else for her to sleep. There was more than enough room as we settled in for the night. My dreams were normal, full of chlorine and screams, full of foals with a soft singing lullaby and a hanging friend. I wasn't sleeping on exhaustion, so every few hours I woke, looked at the sleeping Scotch Tape, and drifted back to sleep. Once I woke to her crying in her sleep, patting her shoulder softly as she called out for her mommy in her dreams. Then I woke to a very unexpected warm sensation on my side. The smell of pneumonia smell and jerked me almost completely awake. The Scotch Tape blinked as I floundered. I breathed more heavily than I had when I got shot by Lancer, and my heart flopped like a giant leech inside my chest. All because Scotch Tape had wet the bed. The olive mare just wrapped the blankets around herself as she hung her head in shame, doing all she could to not break down completely. I kicked myself for my reaction. I'd dealt with far worse. She didn't need me freaking out now. Slowly, I trotted around to the bed to sit next to her. "I'm sorry," she sniffed. "I guess I'm just a big, dumb fool," she muttered as she shook. I hugged her close. "No, you're a filly that's had horrible things happen. That doesn't make you dumb or a baby," I said, repeating almost word for word what had been said to me. She let out another sob as she broke down, vomiting out all the pain that she had been trying to hide. "I missed her so much. I missed them all so much." She wailed in my chest as she held me tight in desperation. I sniffed softly, my tears slower and more practiced. "I do too. I dream about them every night." It took about 10 minutes for her to calm down. "I'm sorry. I thought I could be tough, not cry like a baby, peeing the bed," she said in disgust. "Hey, it could have been worse. You could have been me. I wet the bed until I was almost as old as you. Only I didn't have anything bad happen to me. I just couldn't be bothered to wake up," I said, exaggerating the facts just a little. She laughed despite her tears as I lifted the sheets to wipe her eyes. "You gross, Blackjack." "I'm serious. It was so bad that my mom requisitioned yellow sheets. Almost had medical check me," I said with a grin as she laughed. Finally, she slipped out of the bed and slipped off the wet blankets. "Thanks," she said softly. "We're all damaged, Scotch. All of us. Even Priest. Probably Medley. You don't have to pretend like you're the only pony in the world too tough to be messed up," I said, as I bundled them up with my magic. Quietly, we trot downstairs to where Lacuna was mending the rips and tears in her dress. She could teleport, shoot magic arrows, shield herself, use a minigun, play beautiful music, and sew. What couldn't she do? Apparently laundry. We found a bucket in the closet and filled it with some detergent and water. My magic scrubbing and rinsing the sheets clean with water from the pump behind the house. We just finished as the others woke up. Gloria looked at the sheets in confusion. Isn't it a little early to be doing the wash?" she asked as I strung them out on some low-hanging branches. It'd be a miracle if they ever dried in Hoofington's weather. Scotch Tape flushed as she looked away. Gloria looked at the olive filly questioningly. I took a deep breath, trying to think of anything to say. "I wet the bed," I blurted. She blinked in shock. "Terrible. Absolutely terrible." I added, going more and more red as Glory just stared. I think the mattress might be destroyed. You what? Medley said from the doorway, her eyes going round with glee. So much for last night earning me some respect, or bonding with the Chartreuse filly. She raced towards chapel, laughing. If only I had Taurus's rifle. I could claim it was an accident. A terrible accident. You know you shouldn't drink so much before you go to bed, Glory said, adding, and always make sure you go potty before you sleep, if you think it'll be a problem. I was pretty sure my hide matched the red in my mane. What's going on? Rampage asked as P21 and Priest stepped out as well. Oh, Celestia, would it ever end? Priest had agreed to shutter the house and finish the laundry. Of all my friends, he seemed to have guessed the truth, and if he had, he'd decided to keep it to himself. And, well rested and restocked with food and ammo, we were ready to take on the tunnel. I expected it to be dangerous. I expected it to be dark and creepy. I hadn't expected it to be huge. The tunnel was wide enough for 4 tracks to disappear into the earth, and high enough that even Glory didn't seem too claustrophobic. Hanging overhead were immense winches and cables that still remained taut despite the rust and corrosion. An entire freight train loaded with heaps of rusted crates and boxes was still connected to the apparatus, keeping it from plunging down to the steep grade into the earth by what looked like solid rust. What were those for? Glory asked as she looked at the cables overhead. Probably to help the freight trains up and down the grade into the tunnel, P21 said as he pointed down to the musty depths. The walls of the tunnel had been painted a noxious green, and over the entrance were the words, Hoofington Industrial Access Tunnel Number 1. Beneath that, Restricted Area, and beneath that, Protected by Aegis Security. P21 pointed at the hulking engine at the end of the train. That doesn't look like the steam locomotives in our book. It's not, Rampage said as she trotted past the immense vehicle. At the end of the war, almost nothing used coal besides the power plants. This probably used a spark generator to power the train. I wonder how train flats and brimstone made it through here if it's so dangerous, I muttered. Oh, that's simple. Ride down into the tunnel without brakes and throw a few slaves off to feed the ghouls. Works every time, I've heard, Rampage said with a mirthless smile. Getting through the tunnels is a ton easier when you've got some acceptable casualties with you. Bottlecap says that Dusty just now stops in the tunnels and hoofs everything over to chapel. She's buried in business now. They don't even try the tunnels anymore, Glory added as we slowly trot down the steep tracks. I wondered why they didn't use a gentler grade. Great. Another addition to the millions of questions that I'd likely never answer. Maybe Rover knew.